What's going on, Dragons? Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of the EDHRec, your weekly Friday night Magic pre-show. I'm your co-host, Cory, and with me this week is the man, the myth, the legend, who once got lost in the maze of Ith, but made it out to record with us today, Dylan. Dylan, how are we feeling today?
Well, for one, that maze was not as bad as everyone says it is, you know? But aside from that, I'm feeling pretty good.
There we go. So today, guys, we're going to do a little something different, and we're going to be talking about six underused monocolor commanders you should be trying. These are one from each color, the whole color pie, and a bonus colorless commander that are not frequently seen. We tried to target things that were around EDHRec's list of like 500 and below commanders. I think we got one that slipped in just a little above it, but we got some exciting decks that hopefully you've never seen before, but are going to leave today curious about trying. Before we get into that, though, we are going to also swap up one other quick thing. So normally we would be getting into news at this point, but we decided to mix it up a little bit. There's so much news, and we tend to ramble so much that I think we wanted to stick to just kind of a general conversation before we got into this. So we're going to go and try out something I like to call the untap step. So that's where we break the ice a little bit, have a little mini conversation about stuff that's going on in the community before we get to our main topic. And right now, I think there's just one hulking big boy in the community right now, and that is Lord of the Rings coming out here shortly. Dylan, my man, what's going on? Lord of the Rings.
Ah, yes, Lord of the Rings, the pinnacle of fantasy, the child of Tolkien. Honestly, with what little I have looked at the set, because I just haven't had the time to really examine it as well as I would want to, the set looks really good. Like, I think this is probably one of the best sets in recent years, and that's just with a cursory glance. I could be wrong, though, because I'm not really good at judging power levels of sets.
I think you could be the only person I know that has said, for what little I've seen, because everywhere I've looked has just been like a pure deluge, like vomit of card information. You go on Twitter, you go on YouTube, it's just like commander. I think I saw today there's 106 possible commanders you could have out of the sets.
Well, it's not that I haven't really been seeing stuff, it's just that I haven't really been paying attention to it because I've had other things going on.
Right. You know, now, you say you have other things going on, but I last time we recorded, which was going on about a week and a half ago or so now, you were on the floor. Now, floor update, you're still on the floor. So, obviously, one of the things that hasn't been going on is desk building.
Yes, sadly, severe weather made me lose out on the desk, so now I'm just waiting on the refund so I can order a different one. Or maybe the same desk, but hopefully this one arrives.
Well, hopefully one of these days we'll have you off the floor and it'll look like a actual professional podcast. Even though I'm the only person that can see you, it does look like you've got a comfy computer chair there that your mic is sitting on. So, preferably you get to sit on it at some point in the near future.
Preferably, yes.
Okay. So even though you haven't seen too much Lord of the Rings, let's be honest here. That's about to start printing money. Like, that's going to be the Wizards of the Coast, Christmas in June and July, Control P, spit out $100 bills into Mark Rosewater's bank account. What cards are standing out to you so far that you have seen? Have you seen any commanders that jump out at you? Any just general 99 cards?
So, not really too many 90... Well, there's the Orc Bowman, or whatever it's called. Everyone keeps talking about that card.
Orc Bowmasters?
Yeah, that's a card that seems really good. The Relic of Sauron is definitely going to be an interesting mana rock to see in Grixis decks.
Black seems to be getting a lot of good stuff with the Bowmasters, and then that Mirkwood Bats card that pings for damage when tokens are created or destroyed.
Yes, you got the green black golem. I think it's Grateful Guide.
Yeah, helpful. I believe it's helpful guide, but yeah, you know what's weird? That one almost plays like a Dimir mill deck because it's milling out opponents.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a very interesting way to build black-green, because black-green usually just has the same playstyle over and over again. But honestly, the cards that are sticking out the most to me are Saruman of many colors. I've already stated on our Twitter that is a commander I will want to build at some point. And also, just as I assumed, the Rider of Rohan and the Elvish Council starter decks are the ones that interest me the most.
I really like the Elvish Council one because I think that's the one that looks like the most fun to play at the table, like because the whole voting dynamic. But I kind of want to run it with a Rester, which is like one of the other cards in there that just has to do with if people agreed with you or not while voting.
All right, I have not seen that card yet, but I'm sure that it will fit nicely into the deck.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So it's like a Simic, and then if whenever you finish a round of voting on another card, everybody that agrees with you, like votes your way, gets a treasure, and then I believe you scry or you draw for everybody that doesn't vote your way. So you either persuade people to vote with you, or you get to draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, honestly, the Elvish Council deck, there's two reasons why that deck is really standing out to me. One, there's not really a lot of blue elves in Magic yet, so I'm really excited to see how the blue elves are going to play out. But also, I just have never really been at a table where politics have been a huge part of the game, and that deck just forces people to play politically.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know that I love Brina as one of my commanders, and that's all politics. So, like, politics in a new set of colors, it gets me excited because Orzhov politics, seen it, done it, mastered it. Simic politics, I mean, that's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe I'll buy that precon, and then we can try to find some other very politicky decks, and we can have a all politics table.
Yeah, no turns happen because we're just debating constantly, vetoing each other. But yeah, I think there's some cool cards. I think, every time I look, there's more cards to look at. It's definitely like a head spinning set because my list of commanders I want every time I look is like, oh look, that one looks cool, that one looks cool, that one looks cool. Now what I need is people to help me narrow my list instead of hyping another commander to add to my list, you know?
Oh, you know what? One that neither of us has talked about right now, but I know that we both kind of enjoyed. Can't remember the character from Lord of the Rings name because I'm really bad with names and they barely appear. But
it's Bill,
the spider.
Bill, right? Oh, Shelob. Yes. I like it because it's food tokens, and I've got a softness for Guillaume, and it's sort of like creatures into artifacts, which is very Merkel-y, and I've got a softness for Merkel Lord of Bones. So it's sort of like two commanders that I have a bit of a sweet spot for merged into one glorious spider. So that is definitely on my my watch list.
And let's not forget, it is in green, so you can double those food tokens.
It's in green. I'm kind of tempted to get the Hobbit's was it Food and Friendship deck that's black, green, white, because then I can splash in. Well, Sheila wouldn't do too great there because it's kind of like Spider Tribal, but I could get my boy Guillaume in it.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, no, honestly interested in building Spider Tribal because there's a lot of Spider cards out there that are really cheap, so you can probably build the deck. You know, your creature base probably won't be super expensive. It's all about whatever spells and enchantments you use that'll really bring up the price of that deck.
Oh, for sure, because you got to figure a lot of the spiders are like 1/2s with reach and death touch kind of thing. that are very, you're talking like 5-cent cards. Because the only one that's Spider Commander really is what? Arasta, I think?
Oh, yeah, the Endless
right
Web.
now. Mm-hmm. Or you see people, what's the Planeswalker? Lolith or something like that?
Oh, yeah, the Spider Queen.
Yeah, they'll run, and they'll have like the Planeswalker to produce spiders, but I like it because it makes a tribe that you don't see a lot of play pop back up. I'm also very excited for what I am lovingly calling Tombadil, which is Tom Bombadil and his 5-colored Saga deck. Just because I think it seems very lore flavorful.
Oh, definitely. Like, I'm not interested in building that deck, but I'm interested in seeing how people play that deck.
I'm interested in building it, but my concern is that it may be too complex for me to run. Like, it looks like it's a lot of brain power deck because you need to proliferate lore counters. You need to kind of like time when different sagas go off so you can take advantage of Tom Bombadil's ability because it only triggers once per turn to let you search for another saga. So you kind of got to like manipulate a lot of counters and time things. So it seems cool, but yeah, you will see.
And then, of course, it has the ever-present issue of being a 5-color commander, so you got to be really careful with your mana base.
Yeah, now the one plus side to Tom Bombadil is that he searches your deck for sagas, so he kind of thins the deck to help you also kind of get to land faster. So it's ramp in the sense that you're not going to miss your land drops if you're kind of self-thinning your own deck on top of regular draw cards. But yes, 100%. 5-color land base, pain in the ass.
Yep, and of course, if you're not drawing the right lands, you can't get out your sagas, which means that they can't go off to make Tom search for new sagas.
Now, speaking of 5-color pain in the butt cheek land bases, you know what is not a difficult mana base to pull off? Monocolor. That's right. So switching into our main topic today, we're looking at 6 underused monocolor commanders that we think you should give a try. We're going to be going through 1 through 6. Like I said, 1 for each color of the color pie, plus a standout colorless commander. And we're going to take them in order from quote-unquote most popular to least popular according to EDHRec's commander rankings. So even when we say most popular, it's not all that popular, just based off of who's turned in decks. But our first pit stop is one that Dylan suggested. We're going to be in the murky Murkwoods of Darkness with a black commander. So, Dylan, take us away. What do we got? What are we looking at here?
From the gruesome plain of Innistrad, welcome to the Nephalia region, where you will run into Ghoulcaller Gissa. Now, this is one that is above the 500 and below, but when I looked, it was under 500, so it must have gone up a little bit.
It's also, in your defense, it's right on the cusp, so,
yeah.
So,
this is a 5-mana commander, 2 black, 3 colorless, so a little bit of a hefty price. She's a 3/4, that's a decent stat line, but what really brought her out, in my opinion, is the ability, pay 1 black mana, and tap this creature. Sacrifice another creature, and then create X/2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. So basically,
I like it.
She turns your guys into more guys.
Yeah, I like it. This is this is EDHRec. This is commander number 469. There's only 1,598 decks, a little under 1,600, and she only costs $2.30. So one of the things you'll notice a lot on this list as we go through is when you have low popularity commanders, they tend to be cheap commanders. Not bad, but cheap, which is great for deck building.
Yep.
So if we're looking at Gissa here, I'm seeing a little sacrifice theme. I'm seeing a build your zombie theme. So we each took the liberty of picking 3 cards to kind of highlight what these decks would look like. So you're going to hear about 3 different cards on each one of these. But I like what I'm seeing here. So how would you build this deck? So we've got Gissa on the field. She wants to sacrifice creatures. She wants to build up her zombie army.
Yeah, so obviously, even though Gissa herself is not a zombie, you're probably going to be going zombie tribal with this card. Mm-hmm. And the good news is she's good for 2 different strategies. Go wide, because she produces a lot of tokens, or aristocrats, because you're sacrificing things.
Mm-hmm. It should be noted there's a lot of mono-black aristocrat things that care about sacrificing. You've got your grave packs, you've got your dictated Ereboses that whenever anything dies, you're forcing people to sacrifice. So both of those strategies, are pretty solid. If you got a grave pack out, you sacrifice 1 creature. Let's say you sacrifice Hell. You sacrifice 1 2/2 zombie. You've now got 2 zombies, and you force the entire board to sacrifice 1 of their creatures. So you're up and they're down.
Yep. Okay, so the 3 cards chosen to go with this deck.
Mm-hmm.
First off, we're staying on the plane of Innistrad with Gravecrawler. The Gravecrawler is a 2/1 zombie for 1 black mana. It cannot block, but you may cast it from your grave as long as you control a zombie, which when you sacrifice this to Gissa, you're making 2 zombies, which means you can then bring it back on field to sacrifice it again next turn. This will probably always be able to come out of your graveyard so long as you don't get board wiped.
Yeah, it's 1 mana. It's very nice. So if you bring this out each turn, you bring it out for 1 mana, you put in another mana to Gissa, you turn it into 2 zombies, which ideally means then you've got 2 zombies to bring this back out next turn.
Yeah, I mean, 2 mana for 2 2/2s?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
for 2/2/2s?
The next card is, funnily enough, also from Innistrad, Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia. So this is another human wizard like Gissa. It's a 2-drop, 1 black, 1 colorless. It's a 1/1. But its ability, at the beginning of your end step, if you control no creatures with Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, which a Decayed token is a zombie that after it attacks, it sacrifices itself. But this is something where at the end of your turn, you get the zombie, and then either during your turn or during your opponent's turn, you sack that zombie to Gissa to make 2 more zombies, and now you don't have a Decayed zombie, so on your next turn, you get another zombie to sack.
Yeah, it should also be noted that Gissa can activate her ability at instant speed, so you can also do something where you attack with the zombie, it deals combat damage, and then you pay a black tap and sacrifice it straight to Gissa before it dies, essentially.
Right, yep. In response to the trigger of the Decayed zombie dying, sacrifice it all for more zombies.
Yeah, and those zombies that Gissa creates are not decayed, so then you kind of have like a perpetual army, but then that allows Jadar to then trigger at that end step and create a zombie. So then you're really up to 3 zombies at that point.
Yeah, no, like, both of these cards are working very well with Gissa. One is just a continuous sack outlet. The other is a continuous sack outlet.
No, it's great. I actually, I like Jadar a lot. I keep him in my Hello deck.
Oh, he is very good for casualty.
Mm-hmm. When you need a 2/2 to sacrifice for casualty triggers, and you can get one, 1 a turn, it's... Jadar is one of those things that's basically just made for free sack fodder. You're not really using that zombie, I don't think, for attacking, but if you need a free sack outlet, or you need fodder to feed into your sack outlet, Jadar's 100% an all-star.
But with all this sacking, what are we going to do with it? Well, we mentioned aristocrats, and that's where Vengeful Dead comes into play. So this is a 4-drop. It's a 3/2 zombie, 1 black and 3 colorless. whenever Vengeful Dead or another zombie is put into the graveyard from play, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, so you got Gravecrawler that you're constantly sacrificing. You have the decayed tokens you're constantly sacrificing, which tokens do hit the graveyard. Just for people who don't know that ruling, they do hit the graveyard before they disappear. If you got Vengeful Dead on the field, all these zombies that you're sacking are also dealing damage to your opponents, so not only do you have to worry about your swarm attacking them, they have to be careful about you killing your own zombies or killing them in retaliation.
Oh yeah, it should be noted, this is one of those decks as well where it's always great to have like a Viscera Seer, which is literally just sack a creature, scry 1. And you almost don't really care about the scry 1 so much as you care about the sack a creature, because you can, since it's a cost, you can sack your whole board if you wanted to. So it's foreseeable that you have a Vengeful Dead out, and let's say you get to the point where you've got 5, 6, 7, even 2/2 zombies out there, and you go, okay, maybe the board's not in a good position for you to start declaring attacks. You could sacrifice 5 zombies and ping every opponent for 5 life on top, and then get any other benefits you might also have out there.
Oh, definitely. Like, again, you're either going to go wide with zombies or you're going to aristocrat your opponents to death. Either way, Gissa is a very solid mono-black commander. About the only issue is that she costs quite a bit, and since you're in black, you don't have the ramping abilities of green. However, black does have a lot of rituals, which are cards that give you mana, like the famous Dark Ritual, where you pay 1 to get 3 black mana.
Another one I've actually been growing on in recent years is Bubbling Muck, which essentially is whenever you tap a swamp for that turn, it produces an extra black mana. So if you set up like your traditional Urborg, Cabal, Coffers kind of deal, and you turn everything into a swamp, now all your swamps tap for 2 that turn, which, I mean, that's always a great benefit as well. But you're right. I think the 2 things holding us back is not just the mana, but the fact that in blue, you famously have like things to untap Gissa. In black, I think you struggle with that a little bit. But why?
This is definitely a slower commander, but the payoff is too good to not really try it out,
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where, we're talking about incidental value, right? Like 2/2 black. You can take in 1 2/2 and turning it into 2 2/2s. But the way this reads too, you can always get something larger. You could get a Grave Titan, or you could get a much larger kind of black creature. And heck, if that thing's got 5, 6, 7 power, sacrifice it. Now you've got 7 2/2 zombies on the board. So don't think you necessarily have to go small and do incremental things. You can always have something that's big, flashy, with a huge ETB trigger. Splash it out, get that ETB trigger. When you're done with the creature, sack it off, and basically build yourself a board on site.
Yeah, nope. Go wide and kill everything you control.
Now, since you picked this one out, let me ask you a question. So why do you think this one is this far down on the list? As far as popular commanders, why don't you think Gissa sees more love?
Honestly, I think that it's what we already talked about, just being a 5 mana commander in mono black. It's just quite a bit to pay for, and again, because you're stuck to only using her ability once per turn, it's just a slow commander. Like, the value is really good, it's just not a commander that works fast enough to really be worth it.
Yeah, now, I should tell you, I've seen this... so I've not used this, but I've seen this commander out and about before, and I have considered building this deck just because I like Gissa as as a character. My wife actually plays the Gissa and Geralf. I'm not gonna say partners, but where they're both on the same card. Yeah, to let you summon a zombie out of the graveyard each turn, or on your turn. I will say the standalone Geralf is hot dookie. So if you're going to split them up, definitely go Gissa over Geralf. But you know what I think holds us back is I'm going to say one word to you: Krenko.
Yeah, no.
Because if you look at Krenko, which is just tap, duplicate, or double your goblins, this is kind of what Gissa is doing, except you have to sack a creature, pay mana into it. It's a very black way of going about it.
Yeah, no, like it again, that it's just Gissa is just slow. Krinko is one less mana, and you don't have to put mana into using his ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much faster to get a lot more goblins than it is to get more zombies, but I still think Gissa is definitely a fun lower tier commander to have.
Yeah, I also like the fact too that there's a lot of in black. One of the things you can deal with is the fact that there's a lot of devotion based strategies as well. Now the zombie tokens don't have pips, so you won't be able to really get triggers off of like Grey Merchant Asphodel. But things like Ayara First of Lochthwain that just says whenever a black creature enters the battlefield, deal 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Stuff like that will trigger. So, if you sacrifice a zombie, you make two zombies.
That's 2 triggers.
2 triggers. Mm-hmm. So I do like this, and like you said, black does come with a lot of die trigger based enchantments and stuff as well. And black also, incidentally, comes with the most abilities to sacrifice creatures. So if you don't care for Gissa specifically, you can also look at or Gissa as the sack outlet. You can always look at things like Gissa builds the board state, and then you use those tokens to sacrifice to things like your Ashnod Altars, your Viscera Seers, your other things, and kind of get value that way as well.
Definitely. Now, again, Gissa's not the worst commander, but probably better in the 99.
So I think when we go through each of these, let's do this. So, would you put this as your commander? Yes or no? Like, where are we thinking? Let's say S through F. Where would you rank this commander?
Probably about a C.
I think this is about a C or a D as a commander on its own. But if we look at just mono commanders and we're looking at mono kind of obscure commanders, I think this would be like a A for what we're looking at in this narrow sense. But I think if we look at like every commander in existence, probably about a C or D.
Yeah, like if we're talking about just like monocolored commanders, I probably wouldn't put any higher than a B. But again, like solid C, solid B.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm a little higher on this in mono commanders than you, and I think I'm a little lower on this in kind of the scope of everything than you. But moving on, we're going to go from the opposite of black to white. When we're looking at Odric Lunarch Marshall, this is going to be number 504 on the EDHRec list, so we're now moving out of the 500s. Only 1,450 decks and a mere 22 cents. Dylan, 22 cents is a great start to a commander deck if you're on a budget. So lay it on us. What are we looking at here for mono white?
All right, so Odric Lunarch Marshall. So it's a 4-drop, so it's a little less expensive. 1 white, 3 colorless, a 3/3. That's a pretty solid stat line there. But the key to this commander is definitely the ability. At the beginning of each combat, not just your combat, each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is done for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance.
What is it? Okay. You threw a lot of keywords at us. Break it down for us in a simple. What does this mean? What are we trying to do here?
To put it in the most simplest of terms, you have an ability. Now everyone has an ability.
Everything you control. Yep, everything you control has an ability. Now, I will say, because you just mentioned it, I didn't even realize it was each combat. For the longest time, I thought this was just your combat.
Yeah, no.
So this already took a huge uptick for me.
Yeah, no, like, white is the color of allies and sharing, and this guy loves to share with his allies.
Yep. So my creature has first strike. Let's say I've got one creature's got first strike and vigilance. We go into combat. The whole board my whole board now has first strike and vigilance.
Right.
Which is brutal on the attacking side and even more brutal on the defending side. Okay. So how would you go about building this? What do we got? What kind of cards have you chosen to highlight?
All right. So the first card that we're going to highlight is the Battlefield Raptor. Now, this is a 1/2 bird for 1 white. It has flying and first strike, which means you have this bird. Now all of your guys just get to jump over your opponent's army. And if they have flyers, then yours hit first.
For a 1 mana, for a 1-drop, that's crazy. I've seen 1-drop, like 1-drop 1/1 flyers are common. But I mean, adding that first strike, I think is probably the game winner for you right here.
Yeah, I know there's another 1-drop flying bird that's flying and lifelink. I can't remember. I think it's Healer Hawk.
Yeah, Healer Hawk.
But I just feel like Battlefield Raptor is just a better one because first strike is a very good offensive and defensive ability.
Oh yeah, it can't be understated. Now, I think the first strike on Battlefield Raptor, kind of takes it only so far, but getting first strike on something that is maybe you get like a deadlier creature that now has first strike, that's where the real value comes in here.
Yep. How about first strike on your Sun Titan?
I personally, not in white, but I personally run a deck in like a modern deck that's green-black, a Golgari build, that focuses on first strike and death touch. That's a brutal combo.
It is. But if flying and first strike are not enough, let's look at Zetalpa Primal Dawn. So this is an Elder Dinosaur, a 4/8 for a whopping 8 mana, 2 white, 6 colorless. That's a big price to pay. But it has flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible, which means now during every combat, everything you have has all of those things. And that is a lot of things to give to all your guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, flying is already hard enough to block. So then blocking a board full of flyers that also have trample, that's pretty rough.
And double strike.
And double strike. Zetalpa is obviously famous for being sort of like the word soup of cards, and they love to print this in precons, in white precons, so you can get it very cheap. It is expensive on the mana side, but I mean, those are very nice keywords to have on an entire board. Giving your entire board indestructible is a big sigh of relief when you swing into attack.
Definitely. But you know what? Having all these keywords, it's nice, but it's not the most payoff. So let's fix that with the third card, Achroma, Vision of Ixtildor. So this is a whopping 7 mana, 2 white, 5 colorless for an angel that's a 6/6. And this angel just happens to have flying, first strike, vigilance, and trample. But
okay, almost as Zetalpa worth.
Almost as Zetalpa worth.
But I think the next ability is probably juicier.
Yes, this is the big payoff for this deck because at the beginning of each combat, again, each combat, not just your own, until end of turn, each creature you control gets +1/+1 for, what is it? They get +1/+1 if they have flying. They get +1/+1 if they have first strike, if they have vigilance, if they have trample, if they have hexproof, haste, death touch, indestructible, lifelink, menace, protection from, reach, vigilance, partner. Also, this thing has partner, so all of your creatures, for each keyword they have, they're getting +1/+1, which means this is going to pump your entire board drastically.
Yeah, now it should be noted, like Achroma, just this card by itself basically becomes an 11/11 on each combat without factoring in anything that EDHRec gives it. An 11/11 flying, first strike, vigilant, trample monster.
Yeah. So,
and now it's spreading those four keywords, not partner, but it's going to spread the other four keywords to your entire field.
Yeah, so just this and EDHRec give your entire board +4/+4.
Yeah, and that's not factoring in, anything else you might have out there. If you have Zatalpa out as well, you're also adding double strike and indestructible to the list, and now it's +6/+6. On top of, all the abilities themselves, which obviously have their own added benefits.
And let me tell you something. White has a lot of cards that have these keywords.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, out of the keywords EDHRec lists, first strike, super common in white. Flying, very common in white. Double strike, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink. I mean,
lifelink is super popular. Yeah, vigilance and lifelink are probably the most popular ones you'll find in white.
Yeah, vigilance, lifelink, and I would probably say first strike are like the face of white. Double strike, even.
Yeah, the one that you'll find the least will definitely be your haste and your death touch.
Yeah, even like Skulk. I want to say Skulk is more of like a blue ability.
I forgot that even existed until I read it on EDHRec.
That's them trying to shoehorn that in, because I think it's only on there because at some point they thought it was going to be evergreen. Let's just say that's probably not the case. I would say, now imagine how brutal this would be if I had a little magic eraser, right? And I'm going to erase the word Skulk, and then I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna scribble in the word ward.
Oh, yeah. If ward had been a thing when this card was printed,
because imagine giving everything on your battlefield hexproof, indestructible, and ward whatever. Like, so if you've got,
well, I guess I guess if you have a hexproofer, you don't really need ward, but still,
it's just it's just
extra
another
protection.
added layer, Or if it had phasing of some kind, that would be hilarious too, I think. But yeah, I mean, this has. Look, I think of the 100 some odd keywords, I think there are. I think this has all the most pertinent ones.
If only it gave you horsemanship.
That's what we're missing. One horsemanship card to spread the love everywhere. I mean, they could give you Shadow. That was in white. Yeah. That would be kind of a similar-esque ability.
But yeah, so if you think about it, EDHRec just turns your board into discount slivers.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those decks where everybody has seen this card, right? Like, this card gets slotted into a ton of precons. This is a card that gets reprinted a lot, hence the 22 cents. But nobody really knows what to do with it. I think it sees a lot of appearance in the 99. But turning into a commander has a lot of potential if you can line up really cool utility creatures, either with these abilities or something that would just be completely busted, if it had these abilities.
Yeah, no, but with our little ranking system, I'm sad to say that as commander or in the 99, whether it is a mono deck or a multicolored deck, I think I just got to give this thing just a flat C minus, because while the ability it has is great, EDHRec is definitely one of those things that you have to very specifically build around. You have to make sure that you have those keywords. You got to make sure you have multiple instances of those keywords, and you got to make sure you have things that can have payoff with those keywords.
100%. And I also think this is a deck that probably has a very high mana curve, because a lot of the cards you're looking for that have multiples of abilities, like your Zatalpas, for example, are high mana just for those abilities. And if they're low mana in the sense of Battlefield Raptor, it's because they have no other abilities. So it's very rare that you're going to find something like an Achroma Vision of Ixidor that's both like two great abilities. So you kind of, I think I agree. I think it's hard to find that balance between utility creatures that just have keywords on them and things that don't have keywords that you're thinking, oh, this would be fantastic if it had flying or if it had double strike. And usually those are the ones that have some kind of ability to say, like, when this does combat damage to a player, do blank. So usually those don't come with flying or trample or anything like that. So giving those that ability is fantastic, but it's sort of like, okay, I have to find 3-4 cards to go, this is what I want to give the ability to, this is what has the ability, then I got to get EDHRec out. So I do agree that it's sort of like chaining a lengthier combo together to make this work. So you say C minus, I would yeah, I gotta give this like a D minus, only because I like Gissa more. I really like Gold Collar Gissa a lot more. I think this has potential, but I do think there's some hurdles to jump through. But as far as like obscure mono white commanders, because I think when you think mono white commanders, you're thinking Light Paws, you're thinking like Heliod, stuff like that. As far as like outside the top 500 commanders, this is, I mean, it's pretty solid. I think the other EDHRec I might enjoy more, the one that controls attackers and blockers.
Oh yeah, that one's pretty good, but that one requires you to have a built board state like this one does. That's probably the biggest fault with EDHRec, is that you need a board state for him to work.
Yeah, almost regardless of the card. Almost just, all of them need a board state. But I do like the card. I just think I'm a little higher on Gold Collar Gissa. But if mono white isn't your thing, let's get a little angry.
Time to move to a card that was picked by Cory. We are going to dive deep into our hearts, pull on our emotions, and turn that power of emotion into raw strength with the color red.
All right. So I'm coming at you guys, mono red here, with Valduk, Keeper of the Flame. For 2 on a red, we're looking at a 3/2 human shaman. At the beginning of combat on your turn, for each aura and equipment attached to Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, create a 3/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. We're looking at commander number 564, a little over 1,200 decks. But this one's only 4 cents. 4 cents. I think it's a great commander.
You know what? I cannot disagree with that, because just reading that ability, it does one thing that I've seen a lot of people complain about, and that is give you a payoff for doing a Voltron strategy.
I like it because it's a mix between Voltron and Go Wide, right? Like so obviously you want to run great auras, great equipments. Now the key is you don't even need to attack with Valduk. You can just add things to them for protection. So you can sit there and run your Swiftfoot Boots, your Lightning Greaves, whatever it is, and just start loading up on all those good stuff.
Well, hold on a second. You do
Yeah,
not
no
want to
lightning
do the
greaves.
lightning greaves. I accidentally
Right.
I made that one mistake with Chishiro once.
Cause everything to drop off. But yeah, you definitely do want to run like protection-based equipments, things like that. This is a hey, sword of blank and blank. Fantastic. Give yourself protection from different colors and whatever other payoffs. But then you're just making 3/1 creatures that have trample and haste. And you're not going to be sad about losing them. So even if you make 4 or 5 of them, or whatever the case is, throw them at an opponent and they all get blocked, I mean, hey, you're getting some trample damage in, and you might as well. It's the ultimate smash face commander, because if you lose your board, who cares? You're going to lose it on your instep anyways. But I got a couple cards we've selected for this bad boy. I had some crazy ideas. So first off, we've got Harmonic Prodigy, which is 1 and a red for a 1/3 human wizard. Comes with prowess. Doesn't really matter on the prowess. What matters is the ability. If an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So this is Valduk Harmonicon, baby.
All right, and just for any new people out there, prowess is an ability that puts a +1/+1 counter on the creature until end of turn every time you cast a non-creature spell.
You know what's a non-creature spell? Artifacts and auras.
Yep. So you're going to be just throwing a bunch of those out. Sadly, prowess only works on the creature that has the ability, so you know what? You're going to be throwing out a bunch of auras and enchantments, so that is going to just make Harmonic Prodigy really big for a turn.
Yeah, now, I'll say personally, I'm probably not swinging out with Harmonic Prodigy, because this is one of those value pieces I want to hang on to. But instead of making, let's say, 5 3/1 elementals, now I'm making 10 3/1 elementals in a turn just by having it hang out on the field. I mean, I'm not going to complain. Now, what I do want to attack with is Devilish Valet, which is a new Capenna card. So it came out a little over a year ago. It sees some play, I should say. But in this deck, I mean, it's kind of made for this kind of deck where you're going to pump out a ton of creatures at once. So Devilish Valet is a 2 and a red for a 1/3 Devil Warrior. Comes with trample and haste, so you can plot this down, same turn attack right away. But it's got a fun little alliance ability, which is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn. I know. Stunned silence from Dylan.
So, the Devilish Valet with that alliance ability, just to show people how good this is with this commander, let's say that you have 2 equipments attached to Valkut. That will make 2 elementals, which means that the Devilish Valet will trigger twice, which means it'll go to a 2/3 and then a 4/3 for nothing more than just going to your combat step.
Yeah, now, that's the other nice thing is for Devilish Valet, it is when they enter the battlefield, not a cast. So if you can make as many tokens as you want, or as many elemental tokens as you want, and it's just going to keep doubling and doubling and doubling. Now,
if only he was a shaman or a wizard.
Now, what I think this is the perfect deck for, like your kind of ETB deal damage kind of stuff that Red is like super famous for. So like your Impact Tremors, your Perforos God of the Forges, stuff like that. So when you're making, let's say you do make 2, because 2 is a very easy number to get to, right? So if you make 2 elementals, Impact triggers, hits. That's 2 damage to everybody. Perforos hits. Perforos pings for 2 for everything that enters the battlefield. So that's 4 right there. So you're looking at 6 damage to each person right off the bat. Now, the biggest key here is equipments and auras, because they're notoriously a bit clunky in the degree of getting them out, equipping them, and letting them stick onto one kind of Voltron-y commander. And also, if we pump this to the degree we want to pump it to, you're just going to kind of run out of deck slots. So this isn't really a deck where you want to have 35 equipment. I mean, you do from a number standpoint, but you obviously got to make room for your ramp, your card draw, kind of your vegetables of the deck, your building blocks of the deck. I'm going to say it. Tago Goblin Weaponsmith. That is a 2 and a red for a 2/2. Answer to our prayers. So he's got a landfall trigger that's whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a colorless equipment artifact named Rock. And now the Rock has a little bit of ability, which is you can pay 1, you can tap and sacrifice it. You tap the creature that it's equipped to, and sacrifice the Rock to deal 2 damage. Not super relevant, maybe for like that last bit of damage if you're struggling to get through like 2 damage on the last opponent. But what really matters is the fact that you're making a free equipment on a landfall trigger and equips for 1. So for 1 colorless, you can put as many rocks as you want on Valduk. You can bury him in a Temple of Stone, and he's just going to use that to pump out elementals.
Yep. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that the rock has an equip cost of 1. So the land that you played to get the rock pays to equip it.
Now, the other nice thing is there are some equipment that have colors, like Ember Cleave, stuff like that, but a vast majority are going to be colorless, which means, again, you put swords on yourself. They give you protection from blanket, like, Sword of Feast and Famine, Hearth and Home, Fire and Ice, stuff like that. They'll give you protection, plus whatever other incidental, like abilities that come with them. But you can essentially set yourself up in a way where it's very hard to interact with Valduk. But for each one of those things that you're giving yourself a layer of protection, you're also producing the elemental on the other side.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a card that you selected, but something that I think would slot really well into this deck would be Warstorm Surge. Because that's a card where whenever a creature enters your battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Target creature or player. So it might not hit everybody, but every time that you make one of those 3/1 elementals, you're just throwing 3 damage wherever you want to throw it.
So that's what I'm thinking. I like this deck. I actually have one in my TBD, commander pile. Just because I'm like, hey, look, it looks like it's got a lot of fun, a lot of potential. The other thing I will say that synergizes really great with this deck is sacrifice outlets on the back end. Because, again, you're going to lose these elementals at the end of your turn. So that's where you have your goblin bombardments, where you can basically, let's say I make 10 elementals, attack with them all. Whichever ones survive the just bloody turmoil of that battle, they come back, I sack them all and fling them at a person.
Or sacrifice the ones that got blocked that'll die, so at least they still get to do damage.
Yeah, sacrifice those. You can also look at your Ashnod altars, stuff like that, if you need to convert them into mana. There's a lot of kind of fun things, because, again, let's say you sacrifice one to Ashnod's altar for 2 colorless mana, well, equip 2 is a very common equip cost. So that could be the difference between you getting out another mana rock, that could be you getting out another piece of equipment, that could be you assigning a piece of equipment onto Valduk. So swing wide, have a blast, fling as much damage as you want, and then just blow up your own board at the very end for one gigantic haymaker if you can't press through in any other way. But that's what I got for Mono Red. What are we thinking?
You know what? Since this is one you picked out, I think you should rank it first. How would you rank it on a scale of S2F or A to F, whatever we were doing?
Okay. If we're looking at it in the context of obscure monocolor commanders, I think this is S. Now, I'm a little biased because I picked it and because I want to build it. But I think that because it's such a intuitive kind of win con, that I think if you are brand new to Magic, this is how I look at these kind of obscure commanders. If you are brand new to Magic, you could pick up this deck, completely understand how it works, win a game, and just have a blast doing it. Because this is sort of the smash, I fling stuff, I do damage, I'm just skipping around the table having lulls kind of deck. I love it. I love it 100%. I think it's S within this context. Within the context of commanders as a whole, C+, B-, because there's definitely huge power creep commanders if we were to look at, the big boys of the format. But I think it is a fun deck that could definitely sneak up on an unsuspecting pod if they didn't know what was coming.
All right. Yeah, I think that I would give this an all-around B-.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you a good payoff to Voltron strategies. It's a fairly cheap commander, so it's not going to be hard to get onto the board, and it's not a difficult one to run, like you said. However, I feel like if you show up to a table and you reveal this is your commander, people are going to know what you're going to want to do, so they're going to make sure to destroy it before it gets too many equipments onto it. They're going to make sure to destroy your equipments and your auras so that you can't get a huge payout. It's one of those decks where it does one thing and it does it very well, but if your opponents know what that deck does, it's just like, I'm just going to stop you from doing it before you get a chance to.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's Light Pause is the high-end version of this, so to speak, which is auras on a rapid speed thing. Light Pause has the advantage that it kind of cascades into auras, so you equip an aura and then you can filter through your deck for another aura. Valdeck doesn't have that, so yes, it is a step below. So you do have that inherent moment of weakness, which I agree, which is I get my equipment out and they see, hey, I'm either going to blow this thing up or he's about to equip Swiftfoot boots onto it, or he's about to equip a Sword of Feast of Famine, or whatever the case may be. So there's that moment where they kind of see you coming.
Right, and of course, equipping things is at sorcery speed, and people can respond to you equipping. So you could be like, I paid the 1 to equip my Swiftfoot boots. In response to you paying the 1, I blow up your boots, or I blow up your creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yeah, 100%. I think this is something where you catch people with their pants down, or you get targeted into the ground. It's a very glass cannon kind of deck, but I kind of love it for that. I kind of love hey, I'm going for a big haymaker, or I'm going to get sucker punched while I wind up my big haymaker.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Again, there's nothing wrong with this commander. It's just that it is one of those commanders where you can't really take anyone by surprise.
Oh, for sure. But with that being said, guys, we have tackled 3 monocolored commanders that you should be checking out. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have 3 more, even more obscure, less used, rarer, unique commanders. So we're going to take a quick break. Hang tight for a quick word from our sponsors. And when we get back, we're going to keep warming our way down this rabbit hole. What's going on, Dragons? It's your resident deck crafter, Cory, and I'm here with our very first ad read? Well, yes, I am. And I'm here to tell you to check out our sister gameplay channel, Chaotic Commander, hosted by my good friend John. Do you like crazy brews, zany house rules, and a chaotic good time? Well, then it's time to spin the Wheel of Fortune and Chaos Warp over to the Chaotic Commander YouTube channel. Join John, Dylan, and myself as we invite you into our Wednesday night pods where things are anything but normal. you can check out the Chaotic Commander on YouTube today.
Man, that was a really solid ad break you just read there. I have goosebumps with the way that you read that. And you know what? I know that you wanted to say something a little more after that ad break. So what was the extra thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, guys. So I'll be picking up my audio book narration career here shortly. So if you like that ad break, feel free to check me out. But what's even more exciting than checking me out is checking out our good friend John over at the Chaotic Commander YouTube channel. Just want to give him a little extra shout out. I know you heard about him during the ad break, but definitely thank you. He is our very first sponsor on the show, so we want to give him a little extra love. And if you want to show us and him some extra love, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and check out his channel as well. He uploads great content, exciting games. We've featured on quite a few of them. And hopefully continue to do more great work and great games in the future. But with that being said, guys, we have tackled 3 fantastic, amazing commanders. We've got 3 more coming up in front of you. So we still have got colorless, we've got blue, and we've got green. The other half of Wooburg, I guess, and colorless.
We got colorless and the 2 most popular colors.
Colorless and Simic. Here we go.
Yeah, but speaking of doing great work and feeling love, I feel like that is exactly what went into this next commander. Not the card, but the character himself.
Yeah. So next up, guys, we're going to be looking at colorless. So as promised, we're doing 1 from each color, and we're doing a colorless commander. And we're taking a big jump off the EDHRec list. So we were flirting around the 500s there for the first 3. These last 3 are deep treasures. So we're dropping all the way down to number 889 with repping just 573 decks. That's Karn, Legacy Reforged, brand new, only about a month old at this point, coming out from March of the Machine. For 5 colorless, we've got a star artifact creature golem. Karn, Legacy Reforged power and toughness are equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, add colorless mana for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact creature spells. Until the end of your turn, you do not lose this mana as steps and phases end.
Ooh, now, first off, just casting Karn alone, you're getting yourself a 5/5 right there. That's a pretty good stat line right there, but that mana value engine right there.
Yeah, so if you cast Karn just by himself, when you have nothing else on board, you have a 5/5 that's producing you 1 single mana each turn. But the nice thing is when you look at artifacts, so you can only spend this on artifacts, but artifact builds are crazy powerful when built just right. Also, artifacts tend to have a lot of cost reducers. We talked about Cloud Key, actually, in the last episode as our card of the week. This would be a great Cloud Key insertion, dropping it down by 1, giving you an extra, 1 mana out of it. Now, I will say with this card being so new, I think it's going to climb the ranks a little bit. Now, it's way down there right now, but in a couple months, when the people come around, you'll see, Dylan. And then here's what we're gonna do, right? Hear me out. So we're gonna ride the coattails of this. So in a year, when this is like, I don't know, let's say Commander number 400, we're gonna revisit this episode and we're gonna brag about how we single-handedly made Karn Legacy Reforged a viable commander card. Because we got on the hype train early. The dragons are listening. We're going to smelt Karn down. He's going to be added to our horde.
Again, his abilities, with those abilities, I can definitely see him rising up in the ranks once he gets a little bit more time to shine. For a card that's almost Commander 1000, he's got a nice little price tag of just a little under $11.50 as time of recording.
Yeah, so he's definitely, I mean, we've been talking about 4-cent, 22-cent, $2 commanders. He is by far the most expensive commander we are going to talk about today. Spoiler alert for the other two. They are not over $11.
Yeah, so that price tag alone lets you know this is a good card. It's just that people see more value of him in the 99.
Correct. This is definitely a in the 99 in an Urza deck kind of situation. But Karn does stand up on his own. I think the key to this is we got to build a deck that has big mana artifacts with cost reducers, right? So we got to lower that cost, cheat them out, and what better little tool than that is Mycosynth Golem. Now it's an 11 mana card. I'll rip the band-aid off right there. But for 11 mana, you get a 4/5 with affinity for artifacts, meaning you can actually reduce this by every artifact you control reduces its cost by 1. So having Karn out, already a 10 mana. You got a Soul Ring out, it's a 9 mana. But it also gives all your artifact creatures affinity for artifacts. So you can start to reduce them all the way down to 0 if you want. And it doesn't matter how much you pay for Mycosynth Golem, it still is technically an 11 mana artifact, meaning Karn is now in 11/11.
Find a way to get some trample on Karn, and he's doing some big work right there.
Oh yeah, and we talked about it with Valduk, but there are a lot of colorless artifacts. A lot of colorless equipment out there. So it is not out of the realm that you can't go trample and you can't do all these other crazy things.
Give him flying with. I think it's called a kite sail.
Yeah, you can give him all kinds of crazy things. So the idea with this deck here is you want to cheat out a lot of equipment. This is a true colorless deck. So when we were looking at options, I was looking at a couple other ones that did have colors in the description, which means they wouldn't be straight up colorless. This bad boy, 100% colorless. So you can go nuts. Now, the one restriction is you can't cast non-artifact spells. However, you can use that mana for abilities. There's no restriction on pumping it into abilities. And what better artifact ability out there that can be a great mana sink than Walking Ballista? It's an XX, but it's a very famous kind of combo win con in a lot of artifact decks. So it comes in, this is 0/0, but Walking Ballista comes into the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. And then for 4, you can add a 1/1 counter to it. And then you can remove those counters to deal 1 damage to any target for each counter you remove. So this is a great thing to load your board up with a ton of mana rocks, whatever you want to do. And once you're making 10, 12, 15, I mean, I've seen Ursa decks make like 20 mana a turn off of artifacts out there. So if you can make 20 mana a turn, that's 5 counters you can throw onto Walking Ballista each turn that you could then shoot 5 damage at anybody. And you can just, and that's if you want to go that route, because you could also just snowball and make Walking Ballista into like a 30/30, or however big you want to make it. And the nice thing is you can actually remove those counters at instant speed. So if somebody decides they want to target your Walking Ballista, remove it, Path to Exile, Beast Within, whatever the case may be, you can take all the counters completely off of it, and you can throw a gigantic, I almost said fireball, but it's Walking Ballista, so more like a cannonball straight to their face. It's just, it's a great mana sink. It's a great kind of win con. And it's a lot of fun. And I love me some politics, as we've attested many a time on this show. It's also a great political piece, to be honest with you. You get that bad boy up to, 10, 20, 30 counters on it, and you're holding that board hostage, and you say, hey, you mess with me, I'll blow you up. I'll blow you to Kingdom Come.
You know what? The best thing about it is, though, that mana that you're getting from Karn for the Ballista, again, it does not phase out as you switch turns, so you can just keep that mana up for the entire turn. You know, you start upkeep, you get 5 mana, it's like I could use this to put an extra counter on this, or that 5 mana could go into another artifact, so I get more mana on my next turn.
Yeah, so the mana does phase at your instep, but you can, like you said, you can literally sit there with a huge pool of mana all the way through, and then right on your instep, you go, okay, here's my leftover. It does make you very mana efficient, I'll tell you that, because you can sit there on your instep and go, okay, well, I made it through the whole turn with my huge pool of mana. I'm going to dump it all into Walking Ballista, or, hey, I needed to spend it on other things as the turn went, and here we are. Now, another way to get some use out of that mana, and I do like this one quite a bit, is we're going to look at a different Karn. So we've got Karn Living Legacy. This is the Planeswalker Karn. 4 mana comes in, 4 colorless mana, comes in with 4 loyalty. We've got 3 abilities, of which I think the first 2 are going to really tantalize you if you're interested in this deck. For +1, create a tapped Power Stone token. Now, the Power Stone token taps for colorless mana. It has the same restriction as Karn Legacy Reforged, which is it can only be used, or cannot be used to cast non-artifact spells. But those Power Stones now essentially become 2 mana for you. So they can tap for 1, and Karn sees them as an artifact that will produce a mana on your upkeep. -1. Now, this is where you're going to love dumping all that mana. -1 loyalty. Pay any amount of mana. Look at that many cards from the top of your library, then put one of those cards into your hand and the rest to the bottom of your library in a random order. So you don't have Walking Ballista. You don't have that kind of thing. But you are looking for that last little combo piece. Well, guess what? It's the end of your turn and you got 10 mana. Well, second main phase, we're going to down-tick Karn Living Legacy, dump 10 mana into it, and we're going to pull the top 10 cards out of our deck and find the best little bomb and plop that bad boy right into our hand.
Yeah, now this is definitely a very efficient search engine in the deck, because if you can just get enough artifacts out there, you might even be able to look at a third, a fourth of your deck right there.
You get late game enough with this, and here's the thing. So if you're looking at this and you go, hey, I'm going to put Cloud Key in here. I'm going to put Mycosynth Golem to give all myself affinity for artifacts. You're going to put your traditional kind of ramp. Like, you could put a Soul Ring, a Thran Dynamo, stuff like that that's going to just tap for mana. I mean, this is a deck that you could dump your hand pretty easily. It's not as though you're going to be really hurting for mana in this sense. Now, where you might be hurting, I'm going to, spoiler alert it a little bit right here. You might be hurting a bit in the interaction sense, because there's very limited colorless interaction spells, which is going to be kind of your Achilles heel. But as far as building huge board states for very cheap, I think this is the deck to go for. Now, the last ability on Karn Living Legacy, -7, you get an emblem with tap. An untapped artifact you control, this emblem deals 1 damage to any target. Now, this makes your Power Stones fantastic, because you don't need to tap the Power Stone to get the mana anymore, because with Karn Legacy Reforged, you're already getting mana out of it. And then you can sit there and you can tap all your artifacts. I mean, you can even do things like, once you have this this emblem, you can even do things like, I gave myself Unwinding Clock. And then each turn, I just tap all my mana, or I tap all my artifacts, and I ping everybody for damage. Then I untap them. Then I do it all over again. And then on my upkeep, I get all this mana. Then I tap all my stuff. The cycle just keeps going.
Yeah, no, honestly, I was about to bring up Unwinding Clock, and you know, you were talking about the limited interaction, and while you still wouldn't really have a ton of interaction because of, you know, colorless and all that,
Mhm.
you know, you might be able to do some fun stuff if you throw in a Shimmer Mirror or a Vidalcan Ori to give your stuff flash.
Yeah, I mean, this is also people don't think about it, but this is also something that can give you a lot of tokens. So you can also go the token combat route because there's a lot of like mere battle spheres out there. There's a lot of things that create like 1/1 Thopters. So there's a lot of kind of like little shenanigans, constructs you can make, things of
Yep.
that nature to do damage as well.
Decent amount of things that can give you 3/3 Golem tokens.
Yeah, that's true. So there you got it. Karn Legacy Reforged. What are we thinking, Dylan? I'm a little proud the more I've dug into this build, but what do you think?
All right, so as a obscure commander, you know, a lesser played commander and all that sort of stuff, honestly, it's a pretty straightforward deck, and there's not too much you can do with it, but what you can do with it works pretty well. I'd probably give this about a B plus. But in the scope of all commanders, probably about a C.
Okay. I would put it as a D in the scope of all commanders, only because the colorless factor, right? Like I'm a big fan of color identity.
Yeah, the fact that, you know, you're limited to colorless, so, you know, you don't have access you don't have access to a lot of abilities, and the ones that you do have access to are going to cost you more than they would in their natural colors.
Right. I think a good example is like All Is Dust is your primary kind of interaction spell, and that's 7 mana, as opposed to white, which would give it to you the same ability to you at like 2, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, the lack of color identity and then the lack of interaction is really what holds this back.
Yeah, so I would go D only because I'm a big interaction boy. So I'm not getting easy interaction. It kind of hurts me a little bit, but I will say I like this. I don't think it's as powerful. Now, don't be misinterpreting me now, people listening. I don't think it is as powerful as Urza. However, I kind of like it more than Urza because if you've ever sat at a table and watched somebody play Urza across from you and they're spending 20, 30, 40 minutes like tapping every little bauble they've ever made for a blue mana, it's very tedious. I kind of like the fact that I don't have to watch them tap this, to tap that, to untap this, to do this. Just gives me one big bag of mana that I can just go have fun with all for my turn. That's a big win for me.
So I would say that I like this more than Urza, just because,
from a fun standpoint.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more fun than Urza, because when you see someone at Urza, you're like, okay, they're going to build up their board with some artifacts, and then they're just going to cycle through their deck until they get everything drawn, and then here's a Thassa's Oracle or something.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot of, I tap this for blue, and I've got this one that untaps or taps to untap that, to tap this. It's like, and you're watching, it's fascinating because you're watching like the gears of the clock move.
But I'm here to play Magic, not Solitaire.
Yeah, exactly. For the same reason, like for me, am I in Hello Deck, which I mean I speak to very highly. Everybody talks about extra turn spells. I don't run extra turn spells in it. Now, would it be more powerful with those? Yes. Is it more fun? No. And I think if we're looking at it in the realm of outside the 500, come on, we're playing fun, jank, just hilarious shenanigans. So I think in that scope, C+. In the scope of, hey, every commander is available for me and I want to go, smash someone's face at an LGS, oh, this thing is rough. You know?
Yeah, no, rough is probably the best way to describe this when you look at the scope of all commanders.
Mm-hmm. But let us know what you think, obviously, because we're telling you what our tech is. You might have some exciting other tech. I mean, heck, it is colorless. I mean, it does say non-artifact spells, but maybe you've got some way of filtering this, through like a mana rock or something, and you're going nuts with Eldrazi. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think it's Prismatic Lens, pay 2 mana to produce a mana of any one color.
Yeah, I mean, Prismatic Lens. I mean, honestly, any of your signets kind of as well, where it's like pay 1, tap to produce blah, blah, blah. So there are options out there where you can kind of filter it through, but let us know if you see any beneficial tech. But we're going to move on.
Yeah, you mentioned that you love interaction. We're
I love me
switching
some
over.
interaction.
We're going to the color of interaction itself. We are about to mystify and confuse you with the color blue.
Yeah. All right. So blue. This is gonna. So we didn't explain this at the top of the episode. That's on me. We each picked 3 of these. This is my third choice. Now this is a dead ringer. So if you thought I was excited for Velduk, and I was like, this is the smash face, hilarious, I'm gonna have fun, pull great shenanigans commander. Then we look at Karn. We're going on a whole story here. We're going to look at Karn. That was sort of like the thinking man's commander. I've made this mana. How am I going to utilize it? This is the douchebag commander that I like. It's so jank, but there's so many opportunities to bust it. I have fallen in love. Now, what does that say about me? We're not going to get into that. But Mono Blue, we're going to be looking at Maeve, Insidious Singer. For this one, we are, 889, I believe, was Karn. We've shattered the 800s, the 900s, the 1,000 barrier. We're dropping almost to 1,400 to Commander 1395. There's only 186 of these decks floating around out there on the internet. Maeve, Insidious Singer is 2 and 2 blue for 4 total mana. You have a 3/4 Siren. 2 effect is 2 and a blue. Go target creature. Whenever that creature attacks one of your opponents this turn, you draw a card. So you pay 3, go to creature. Whenever it attacks this specific turn, draw a card. So you're activating this on your opponent's turns. And you're just having fun. Goading things, drawing cards, living your best life. I will also say, tentacles. You got to go for the tentacle commander, because why not?
Yeah, now, I'm already seeing one of the big flaws with this commander.
Okay.
And that would be, well, for one, the goad has to be paid for on the turn you want to make use of the ability.
Yes, so you're paying goad on the turn you want to make use of the ability. Now, I will note, for goad interaction, for those of you at home that may not know this, you can also goad your own stuff if you really wanted to. So I could, for example, go, I'm already planning on attacking you with this, 1/1 flyer. I could pay 3, goad my own flyer, attack you anyways, and just get kind of incidental card draw. The thing I do like about this is a lot of times goad has to do with like tap abilities. So you tap your creature to goad a target creature, something along those lines. This is just a mana sink, so as long as you've got mana, you can just keep paying for it.
Yeah, and that is the other flaw with this, is that it does cost 3 mana, and yes, there are mana rocks out there, but blue isn't a very rampy color.
But Dylan, what if I were to tell you that it does not cost 3, and you could goad any target creature for just 1 mana?
I would say, How are you doing this?
And that'll be through the single blue enchantment training grounds. Now, this card, I will tell you, at one point was an expensive card. It was about $17, $18, but it has come down in recent years. You can get it for about $4 now. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 generic less to activate. And then this cannot reduce the cost of mana to less than 1 mana. So this now makes Maeve a single blue mana to go to creature.
Yeah, and that makes it a whole lot easier to goad things, because now you can pay 3, target 3 different things, and draw 3 cards. 3 cards for 3 is a really good payoff.
Yeah, 3 cards for 3. Now, you can also look at things like, for a single blue instant, you can get yourself a High Tide. We talked about Bubbling Muck in the mono black. High Tide is the same thing, except it targets islands. So whenever a target player taps an island this turn, they produce a second blue mana. So you can always double your mana for the turn. Goad out the entire table or whoever's turn it is, and then just let them go swing happy.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you're in a situation, right? You go, man, that card there is so juicy. I wish I had it. I don't want it to be attacking my opponents. I don't want, my opponent attacking Dylan with the card. I want to attack Dylan with the card myself. That's where Willbreaker comes in. Willbreaker is 3 and 2 blue for a 2/3 human wizard. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control Willbreaker.
Ooh, now that is... that's a steep price to pay for a creature with such a... it's an okay stat line, but you're paying for that ability, and let me tell you, that is a juicy ability.
Now, I want you to look at Training Grounds and look at Willbreaker, put them both together, and you'll realize that if I've got, let's say, 5 blue mana available, I could just take 5 of the best things out there, because it doesn't matter if it's goaded or not. I'm just targeting it with the goad. So even though it may not be your turn per se, where the goad would force you to attack, for a single blue in that case, I could just target your best creature, and it's now my best creature.
Yeah, no, target on sight. Card that your opponents are going to be begging to get rid of.
Yeah, now there's all kinds of crazy, broken tech you can do with this. For example, on my turn, I could use Maeve to target and goad all the defending creatures and basically swap them all onto my side of the board, leaving you with no blockers. Or I could use that. I could bring them all to my side of the board to attack on that turn and get all the card draw that I want as well. So now I will say this: Willbreaker is one of those things where it will be targeted. You might be able to pull off getting somebody 1 or 2 things, but once you start doing shenanigans with Training Grounds, with huge mana sinks, they're gonna want to get rid of it. They're not going to enjoy you taking all their stuff. In the same sense that Tergrid is kind of what's the word for it? Let's say disliked so heavily.
It that betrays.
Yep. So this is a kind of a fun combo. So you want to look at things that are going to lower that cost, because, like I said, 3 is kind of a steep cost, but if you can get a Training Grounds out, there are a couple other Training Ground-esque effects that lower activated ability costs. So if you can get it down to 1 blue, or even a colorless and a blue, to where you can just spam it at will, then you're going to load up the rest of your deck pretty much with counterspells. So everybody that wants to screw with Maeve or Willbreaker or Training Grounds, You've got the cards to keep the board clear, and then you're going to pit all your opponents against each other with gold. And we're just going to have fun. Now, the third card, because we're going to pick 3 cards, the third card is another little bit of a spicy meatball for this deck. We're going for the instant speed Illusionist Gambit. It's 2 and 2 blue. So you cast Illusionist Gambit only during the declare blocker step on an opponent's turn. Remove all attacking creatures from combat and untap them. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Each of those creatures attacks that combat if able. They can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. We're talking extra combats. We're talking all kinds of more shenanigans. So you're essentially goading an entire board. And we're just, if everyone was going to swing at you, you play this because it's on their opponent's turn. You remove everything that was going to attack you, and you've now en masse goaded everything. And then given them an additional combat to go swing at other people.
Yeah. Now, this is definitely a card that's a lot better on the defensive than on the offensive because, if you try to use this during your attack step, it's just going to put you in the same situation where they still have their blockers ready. But to turn your opponent's attack against you into an attack against someone else, ooh, the spice.
Now, there is one offensive use that is also going to make this spicy. The way Maeve is worded, they don't have to deal combat damage for you to get the card draw. They just have to attack an opponent. So if let's say I goad your board, I've used Maeve's ability, I've goaded 3-4 of your creatures. You have to attack with those 4 creatures. As soon as you declare that attack, I draw 4 cards. Then I cast Illusionist Gambit. Those are still goaded by Maeve until the end of the turn. Now, they're getting like an additional goad through Illusionist Gambit, but you still have to then attack with those same 4 again, giving me 4 more card draws.
Yep. And,
or however wide the board is.
And again, it just removes them from combat. It's not like it's flickering them and putting them back onto the battlefield. It is just making the declared attack stop, they untap, and they have to attack again.
Yep, just not at you.
Yep.
So you're getting a kind of a QT fog on defense plus, kind of a zesty combo piece, if you will, to draw cards. So we got Maeve. I think it's a ringer.
Yeah, I will say though, there was one thing that we did not mention about Maeve with its ability that I think is worth mentioning.
What's that?
The mind games.
Of will I, won't I goad your creature?
Sort of, because you're going to end your turn with a bunch of open mana, and now your opponent has to think, is that mana to goad my creatures, or does he have a counterspell that he's wanting to leave mana open for?
No, mono blue is a very counterspell heavy bunch of shenanigans. So really, all you got to do is leave 2 blue open, and you're going to make a lot of people sweat.
Yeah, heck, I mean, in the right situation, even just 1 open mana.
Yeah, I mean, you leave 1 open mana, and people obviously have to worry about Swan Song. They've got to worry about an offer you can't refuse is a new one from Capenna. I mean, down in these kind of budgety areas, there's still a lot of very workable, very common counterspells. I mean, you got classic counterspell, you've got Negate, you've got Arcane Denial.
Oh, but Arcane Denial's bad. Your opponent draws 2 cards.
Yeah. The way they suffer. I'm not going to say that I can afford a mana drain, but 2 mana is a mana drain as well. But
honestly, I would say this is a pretty solid commander. Uh, I feel like this is definitely one of those commanders where you got to have a very specific build in mind, which is why I think that I just got to leave this at a flat C of both categories.
Okay, I would agree. I think it's a C. Yeah, probably in both categories. I think you have to build specifically, like you said. And I think this would be kind of the deck where if you're doing too well, you kind of encounter like an archenemy type situation.
Yeah, I will say though, the thing that definitely would make me more inclined to building this deck is just that goad is not really something you see a lot of, so just having a different commander to use that strategy with, it would just make it a little more interesting because, like, oh, I could build a goad deck.
Yeah, and there's even things like all the impetus cycle that came out a couple years ago that forced goad. There's one for each color. I believe the one for blue is mystical impetus. I can picture the card. It's a little cat, but
yeah, I know the card.
yeah.
I just don't know its name.
Yeah, I know there's Marshall is the red one. I know there's one, like I said, one for each color. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting goad shenanigans, but I think goad appears mostly in red as far as like what's most commonly printed. So it would be interesting to see a mono blue build. And I do think that if you just have Maeve in and of itself, I don't believe is a target, right? It's just like, hey, it exists. There's bigger threats on the board. Now, if you've got Maeve and Willbreaker, then, probably you're the archenemy at that point. But moving on, if you guys have been following along, we have visited black, white, red, colorless, and blue, which leaves but a one type of mana for our planeswalkers to pull from, and that is the mana of the forests. The deep, deep forests. Dylan, this is one of your final pick, actually, and I will say before we hop into it, if you thought 1395 was deep on the list for Maeve, we are going to almost nearly double it for this very one, as we are cracking the bottom basement, but I still think a very underused commander that is worth taking a glance at. What do we got?
All right, so commander number 2773, 11 decks, 26 cents. We got Dornan, the Yawning Portal. So this is a human warrior, 1 green, 3 colorless for a 3/3. It has choose a background, but we're not worrying about the background right now. We're worrying about his main ability. Whenever he attacks, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among those cards, put the rest on the bottom of your deck, in any order. That's always good. You get to stack the bottom of your deck. And then you may play that creature that you exiled as long as it is in exile. And it has Undaunted, where it costs 1 colorless less for each opponent you have. So if we were to look at the decks that I suggested, we have Ghoul Color Gisa, which is sort of the in-the-middle deck. You got your Audric Lunarch Marshall, which is kind of your thinking man deck, where you got to string together your abilities in just the right way. And then you've got Durnan, the I don't need to think deck. Now, the reason why I chose this commander is that being able to...
Because Durnan doesn't think.
Yeah, so you get to, whenever he attacks, so it doesn't matter if the attack goes through or not, you just get to look at the top 4, and you get to choose one of the creatures, and then exile it, and then the creature becomes cheaper. This is a great ability. And, you know what? It lets you cheat out some of your higher costed creatures. You get them out for cheaper. Yes, your opponent knows that you have it available, but you know what? It doesn't matter that your opponent knows that you got it exiled and that it's coming eventually. You get it out cheaper.
Yeah, I like this. I also like Undaunted as an ability on here because I mean, here's the thing: how often do you see Undaunted on a card?
Honestly, until this card, I didn't even know that was an ability.
Yeah, like if you see an ability and it starts with UND, you have to assume it's Undying. So Undaunted is definitely a interesting one. So we're looking at big boys that were kind of cheating for free. So if you got 3 opponents, I mean that's 3 cheaper.
Yeah. I will say though, I think that the worst part about this commander is that you got to ship away the other cards. So if you reveal like 2 really good creatures, but then 2 non-creatures that would have really helped you, it sucks that you're not going to see them for a while.
Yeah, I could see that because if let's say I flip and I go, oh, I got 2 utility creatures, and then I've got 2 like absolute bombs of spells, Yeah, I think there would be a little bit of a feel bad, but I think if you're building this deck just right, then you're definitely going for, what, 30, 40. I mean, you're definitely going for 35 to probably 40, 45 creatures.
Oh, yeah. And, in the best case scenario, no one died at the table yet, so all your creatures are getting -3 to their mana cost.
Right, which I think should be noted, by the way, is the fact that this is a commander that kind of gets worse, I would argue, as the game goes on, because the Undaunted becomes less and less effective.
Yeah, but hopefully by the time it gets to that point, you've already got all your things on board that you need on board.
Yeah, now, what big, beefy bad boys are we looking to bring out with Durnan? So if you can cheat them out for 3 cheaper, ideally, I mean, what are we bringing out here?
All right, so we're going to start with a classic green stompy card with the Crater Hoof Behemoth. So this is a creature that cost a lot. This creature cost 8, 5 colorless, and 3 green. But it's a 5/5 with haste that gives trample and +X, and no, it gives trample and then +X to each creature you control, where X is the number of creatures you control. Now, the point of this deck is to have a lot of creatures on board that you get out cheaper, so hopefully you'll have a lot of things on board before Crater Hoof comes out.
Now, I will say I like the fact that you've balanced a 20-cent commander with like a $30 card. The best way to make my 20-cent commander great is if I have a $1,000 deck around it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? You got to do what you got to do sometimes. But, Crater Hoof, it's just one of those staple green cards, and it just works great because you get to dig him out, and he's basically in the second hand because it's not until end of turn. It's as long as that card is exiled, which means it doesn't even matter if Durnan dies, it's still got the whole, it's exiled, I can cast this at the Undaunted.
Yeah, and I think this slot right here, this Crater Hoof Behemoth slot, can honestly be anything that's sort of like a big, beefy beater, which green is full of. You got your Pathbreaker Ibexes, you've got Crater Hoof, you got Avenger of Zendikar, all these things that are like 7, 8 mana that kind of come out that are just like huge table tilt game winners.
Yeah. No.
Getting any of those for 3 cheaper, it's a real feel-good moment for yourself.
Definitely. And you know what? Crater Hoof is a great card to get out, but it also pairs really well with this next card. But this next card is very solid on its own with the EDHRec, a newer card for 7 mana, 4 colorless, and 3 green, but it is an 8/8 Phyrexian dinosaur that cannot be countered. It has trample. It has ward 4, so your opponents have to pay 4 mana to target it with anything. It has haste, and then toxic 4. So cheating this thing out, this card's good enough on its own, but getting out faster, I mean, as long as one damage gets through with trample, your opponent is taking 4 poison counters.
Well, and here's the thing, right? So if you took all of the text off of this and said with an Undaunted, right, you're getting it 3 cheaper. 4 mana for an 8/8 is a ridiculous rate. Even if it had no other text on that box.
Yeah, no, like, again, this is a solid card on its own, but also just being able to get out cheaper and faster, and like I said, if you compare it with Crater Hoof, just giving it that +X, so it's going to survive the blockers, and you're going to get at least 1 damage through.
Mm-hmm. The fact that it can't be countered too is fantastic, because I think on these exiled cards, one of the biggest hurdles is the fact that everybody can kind of see it coming, because they know what you have exiled sitting out there. So the fact that it's like, oh, it's exiled and you can't counter it, so like tough tiddlywinks, like that is beautiful. And then once it hits the board and you go, oh, and I've got Ward 4 on top of it, by the way, good luck.
And
it's a real power move.
And both of these cards having haste really helps, because you just get to make use of them immediately.
Yeah. I mean, haste, if you blow over somebody, because let's say, Durnan is a 4 mana commander. So let's say you could get Durnan out in green, because you're going to be able to play your 3 visits, your Nature's Lore, any of those kind of things. So let's say you can get, instead of turn 4, you're going to get him out turn 3, or maybe turn 2, depending on how the cards land for you. But let's say you get him out a turn early. Turn 3, you bring him out. Turn 4, you attack. And you can pull a Tyrannus Rex off the top of your library. Assuming you didn't play any other cards there for turn 4, you could bring this out on your second main phase if you wanted to, or automatically turn 4, 8/8, trample, ward, haste, toxic 4, and then this really just sits there with like a gun to the table.
Yeah, no. But speaking of having a gun at the table, we've got a very fun thing to get out cheaper with the Apex Altasaur. So this is normally 9 mana, 7 colorless, and 2 green for a 10/10. So, a 10/10 for 9 is pretty alright, but imagine a 10/10 for 6.
Yeah.
And when it enters the battlefield, it gets to fight 1 target creature you don't control. So this 10/10 comes out, and it just gets to kill something.
Yeah.
But whenever this thing is dealt damage, it fights another creature that your opponent controls. And what happens when it fights a creature? It takes damage. So imagine cheating this out and killing all of your opponent's mana dorks, and then getting rid of some of their other good things.
Yeah, and it should be noted, I think one of the things a lot of people confuse about this card is that they don't realize you as the controller of this card have the option to have it stop attacking. So you don't have to keep having it attack until it dies, because it does state it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control.
Which means you can choose 0.
Exactly, or you can stop the chain at any point. So you could have it go and fight 9 1/1s, and then instead of fighting the 10th one that would take it out, you just go, okay, we're done fighting now. And then you've got a 10/10, sitting up as a blocker and ready to attack on your next turn for regular combat.
So long as it makes it to the end of the turn, because, it's going to only have 1 toughness for the rest of that turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you got your Durnan big boy cheaty deck.
Yeah. And you know what? Also, you were talking about how it could be a little bit bad with the things being exiled because your opponent knows you have something. But just imagine, it's turn 5 or turn 4 because you got Durnan out a little bit faster because you had mana ramp. And then you exile this. Now your opponents are sitting there, it's like, he has that available to cast, so I don't want to build my board.
Yeah.
Like, that's another thing I like about Durnan, is that if you reveal the right kind of threat in the exile, it could just make your opponents not want to play things, because it's like, hey, I could build up my board, but he's got that, and if that comes out, everything I just did is for nothing.
Yeah, and I hadn't considered it like that, but I agree, because if you look at the 3 cards you just highlighted, so Crater Hoof, could potentially stop someone from playing a counterspell, because they're sitting there going, well, I can't run my counterspell because if he plays Crater Hoof out, it's game over, so I need to sit here and load a piece of target removal or a counterspell or something like that. Tyrannax Rex says it can't be countered, but again, it's just sort of like you're hovering over them with a big threat. Apex Altasaur is like holding a board wipe over another creature deck. So it's exactly right. Why am I going to build up my board if I've got a bunch of small kind of utility creatures? I'm running like Elf Tribal or Humans where they're all 1/1s and 2/2s. Do I want to build up a huge board knowing that you could drop that for, three less mana than normal and, bomb me out essentially?
Yeah, no, Durnan, I don't really see him ever being a popular commander by himself.
11 decks tells you right there how popular Durnan is.
Yeah, no.
And that set came out, a year plus ago at this point?
Yeah, he's never going to be popular as a solo commander. Now, his ability to choose a background, that boosts him up a little bit. But honestly, he's just a fun commander. That's why I picked him, is because he's just kind of a no-brain fun commander, because it's like, oh, I attacked with him. What am I going to be able to get cheaper?
Yeah. So, Durnan, running it on our 2 ranking scales. So, monocolor, rarely seen commanders, I'm going to give him a D. I don't think he's the best I've seen. I've definitely... I like the fact that he cheats things out, and I kind of like the fact, too, that he's so obscure. And that was the point of this, right? Find obscure, underused commanders. He was so obscure that I think if you put him down at a pod at an LGS or at a friend's house, they would be just confused about what deck you're running. So I think that's a pro. I think the con is the fact that I'm not a huge fan of showcasing to the board what I'm going to play. Also, I feel like there's other ways to cheat out cards in green that might be a little more efficient. Maybe not in the command zone, but definitely in the 99. You've got Elvish Piper and things like that. So for me, he's probably a D in the obscure. In the grand scheme of things, I think he's probably a solid F, because there's definitely a laundry list of things that are higher ranking. But I am curious to see what you say. That's an interesting build. I just don't... the power scale, I don't see it there.
Okay, so in the grand scheme of, monocolor obscure commanders, I agree. He's a D. He's fun, but he's not very efficient. In the grand scheme of all available commanders, we were doing an S2 F. I'm sorry, this guy's getting a Y-.
All right, guys. Well, there you have it. 6 monocolor commanders that have not seen the light of day, or very rarely will. But you should definitely check them all out. I think they all brought different flavors to the table. Dylan, now that we've gone through all 6, most powerful, most fun.
Most powerful, most fun. I think most powerful, I think I would have to give that to probably our red commander.
Veldek?
Yeah. Now, most fun, I would probably give that to Audric, surprisingly.
Okay. Okay. I think for me, most powerful, I'm actually going to go with Gissa. We talked about a little bit about some of the drawbacks on the, speed level of it compared to things like Krenko. But the sacrifice aspect, but it's not really a sacrifice because you're kind of like replacing it and then some. I really like. There's a ton of dice triggers in black. Most powerful for me, I think I'm going with Ghoulcaller Gissa. Most fun, I would have to go with Valduk. I think that just sounds like a fun deck. I don't think I'm, like blowing anybody away at some crazy tournament or anything. But as far as like we're all just sitting down having a good game around a table for laughs, I think it would be most fun.
Yeah, no, I honestly cannot disagree with your choices, and I feel like you probably wouldn't really disagree with my choices either.
No, 100%. So that's what we think, guys. Those are 6 obscure commanders. Let us know down below what you guys think. Is there a commander we missed? Is there some secret tech to Durnan that, hey, you built one of the 11 decks and that there's a hidden key that we're missing that unlocks the world of the Yawning Portal? Let us know down below.
So yeah, let us know which of these you like the best. Let us know some of your favorite obscure commanders. And let us know if you want to see us do something like this again, whether it's monocolored again or if you want us to do color pairings. And if you want us to do color pairings, let us know ally or enemy color pairing so we know which one to do first.
Yeah, definitely let us know. I think if this is something everybody enjoys and we get positive feedback and that kind of stuff, I think the next step is probably 2 colors. We kind of figure ally, enemy, that kind of thing, and we'll take it from there. Or if you just go, hey, I want to see the top 5 green commanders or something, hey, let us know. We could check that out too. But we've got question of the week, card of the week. So, question of the week.
This is a fun one.
Speaking of colors and color identity, this question comes from Jessica. So thank you, Jessica, for taking the time to send over a question of the week, interacting with us, all that good stuff. But Jessica would like to know, what color or colors represent you best, and what colors do you think represent your fellow co-host?
Okay, before we get into this, I just want to say, Jessica, great minds think alike, because this was actually something that I was suggesting us to do as a podcast topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, and I think it's very intriguing because a lot of times we might ask what colors do you like to play, but those don't necessarily represent colors as the person. Dylan, you want to go first? What color do you think represents you, and what color do you think represents me?
All right. So,
be careful now, because I could bomb you in response.
Yeah. Okay. So the colors that I think represent you. Okay. Now, again, we've mentioned that we haven't really had a lot of interaction with each other before we started this podcast.
Sure.
But from the interactions we have had since starting this podcast, I think I would throw you as Dimir colors, blue-black.
Because I'm a shady mother.
Yeah, because, there's been a lot of things that Cory has been doing behind the scenes, which I think really brings out the fact that black is a color of ambition. And okay. I've noticed that it seems like he really likes, digging up information and things like that. He likes to learn new things, and he's always trying to perfect the things that he has learned about and the things that he's doing, which is a core property of blue. So that whole search for perfection and that ambition to get things done, I think blue-black is a good color combination for my co-host.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna get choked up, but thank you. That's very. When you hear Demir, I think the mentality should go for like shady rogues, but I like that. Thank you very much. I'm glad. I appreciate that. Honestly and truly, I do appreciate that. That's pretty touching.
Yeah.
For yourself. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, before I say what I think represents me, do you want to say what you think represents me as a person?
Yeah. So when I saw this question, I very much bounced around with it in a couple ways, right? So two things jumped out at me, right? One was is it being blue-red, and then one was being sort of blue-red with white splashed in. And for a couple reasons. So typically when people think of red, obviously they're thinking of like anger, in the sense of like anger and rashness and things like that. But you remind me a lot of like an is it personality, in the sense of like curiosity. Right? So when you look at is it in a magic context, you think of like Niv Mizzet and things like that, where they're constantly striving to understand more about the world, striving to understand different aspects of just life around them. And you're always somebody that has like a great deal of curiosity about what's happening around them and trying to find kind of understanding in things that are vague. So when you come across, I notice you're a person that comes across problems, and you kind of have like you seek to understand it. And the more we've done the podcast together, I think white is a good representation of yourself as well. Because unfortunately, a lot of times when you look online, you look on just life in general, people seem to be very self-centric, right? So if it doesn't affect them, they're not going to worry about it. But I think you're someone who's shown time and time again that you're very caring, and you're very empathetic to groups that maybe are disenfranchised. So when you look at groups like, okay, a good conversation we had last episode was about Aragorn, and I'm not going to call out anybody, but there's been some flack from certain individuals about our stance on that, right?
Right.
But instead of necessarily taking it in a combative manner, where you're I'm attacking this person or anything like that, you're someone who's standing up for your values, because obviously you believe in our stance there, and you're looking at it from an empathetic standpoint, and you're also not cowering in the face of kind of pushback. Because it's very easy for people to go, hey, I stand for this, and then the second somebody questions them on it, they go, oh, well, not really, I'm sorry, and they try and conform so they don't have pushback. So I see a lot of that aspect in you, which is a very white kind of vigilance, protection kind of color. So that I guess would be my answers. I can see you in sort of the 3-color red, blue, white kind of area.
All right. You know what? I like you said, I definitely appreciate the things that you said, and you know what? That's sort of where I was thinking for myself, honestly. Like one of the things you said kind of was along the same lines I was thinking. But you know what? What colors do you think you would be?
Well, It's hard when you reflect on yourself. I think for me, so I've always resonated a lot with when I first started playing Magic. I resonated a lot with the green white kind of color pattern, which is build my board, protect my stuff, right? But me as a person, and I think me as a Magic player has kind of gone this way too, where I've definitely become more of a blue, black, white-ish or blue, black, reddish kind of player, where I'm about puzzles. Even in my personal life, I play D&D, I play Magic, obviously. I'm making my own card game, stuff like that. So puzzles and problem solving is something that's always been very fascinating to me. So I like those kind of colors where it's very kind of about like being meticulous or problem solving. So I think blue black, and maybe I'd like to think just a splash of white that I'm a good person in there deep down. But what about yourself? What do you think is a good reflection of your personal colors or your, I guess, mantra, as it were?
Okay, so I when I first started getting into Magic, I was very appealed to the color of white because I liked what it stood for in the game. But I also realized that white is something that kind of is how I am in real life. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I would definitely be very Boros, red-white. So white is the color of protection, but it's also the color of unity and working together and, caring about people and helping people, which is things that I really like to do, and it's how I try to live my life. I always want to be someone that uplifts people, and I want to be one of those people that, helps people whenever I can and does whatever I can, being self-sacrificing for others, not sacrificing for my own personal gain. But then I really got into looking at what the colors mean, and red, people, like you said, they always think about it as the color of anger and fury and things like that. But red is the color of emotion, passion, freedom, being true to yourself, expressing yourself. And I am definitely one of those, like, in my day-to-day life, I am definitely very monotone and kind of bland, but when I get into something that I am passionate about or something that I truly love, like, I can get super into it and go about it for hours at a time without even realizing how much I've been talking about it. Just big old rants about things that I love. And
hence the problem with our very first episode of the podcast. We had to split into, like, because it was like a 4-hour thing.
Yes, and then, expression and freedom. Like, I believe that people should be able to be who they want to be, and that people shouldn't have to hide who they are because of the way the world is built. Expression and artistry, because I'm terrible at drawing, but I still love to draw. I love to write. I love to do poetry and things like that. And, red, it's an expression of color. So I feel like red-white is definitely who I am at my core. But I feel like there's at least a bit of a splash of green in there because I also just really love nature and feel like we need to protect the planet and not let it get destroyed by, us just polluting it and overusing the resources. I feel like we need to protect the animals and trees and all that, but I'm definitely leaning more red, white, but there's definitely some green in me. The colors I definitely don't feel are... I definitely know there's no black in me. I'm not really selfish and ambitious. And then blue...
Hey, wait a second. You said I'm black.
Yeah, but for the ambition part, not the selfish part.
Sure.
And then, blue, I do like learning things and things like that, but, I'm not someone who sits there and meticulously studies things unless it's something that I'm very passionate about, which is why, again, I lean more into red than I do blue in that sense.
No, I agree. Like you said, red comes with that confusion where everybody, especially because in the game it's haste, so people are like, oh, attack first, attack fast. But it's really more of a color of like you were saying, passion or like empathy and things like that, and that actually is reflected in the Magic story, because Urabrask, right? The reason Urabrask broke away from the other Praetors was because he wanted the freedom and things, and so he wanted to kind of break the shackles of being part of the whole Praetor system. So I agree with it. Good.
I was going to say, even like Chandra, who is known for her anger, she's also just a very emotionally driven character, and she's been mono red for as long as she's been around.
Yeah, so Jessica, again, I want to thank you personally, and I'm sure Dylan as well. Great question. I think a great feel good moment. We'll keep it up. And I think it's a great question that leads to some great positivity on the podcast. So thank you again, Jessica. Again, if you want to leave a question of the week, feel free.
And I will say, I love how both of us got at least one of the colors right that the other felt like they resonated with.
Yeah, it really helps with knowing that, hey, you're at least whatever you're self-identifying as is being put out there. But moving on from question of the week, we do have card of the week. I do like this. Dylan, what do we got card of the week?
So we were doing a monocolored theme thing, so I was sitting here wondering, what's the best monocolored card I could think of? And the thing that came to mind is Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. So this is a legendary land. You can tap it for a colorless mana, or you can pay 2 and tap it, and then you choose a color, and then you get mana equal to your devotion to that color, which is how many times that mana symbol appears in the cost of things that you control.
This card is an absolute bomb, like a house in monocolor decks. I like it. I like this choice. You sit in a monocolor deck, and if you've got, heck, if you have 5 creatures out, odds are that's somewhere between 5 and maybe 8 pips. So you're taking really 3 land because you're doing 2 and then the tap, and turning into 8 mana, or a Soul Ring in this and 8 mana.
Yeah, you get somewhere between 5 to 10 mana, and for the cost of 2, that's always going to be a net positive right there.
Yeah, people talk about how Cabal Coffers is absolutely bonkers in mono black decks. This essentially is Cabal Coffers in any color you'd like.
Now, granted, this is, when it comes to monocolor, this is definitely probably going to be a lot stronger in green and white, because those are colors that usually have more of the I need my specific color in my cost.
Yeah, now it should be noted, we covered 6 monocolored commanders. Do not put this in Karn. This does not go in Karn, but in any of the other ones, I think this is a huge net positive.
Yeah, definitely. If we just look at the blue deck, if you just have Willbreaker and the commander out, that's pay 2 for 3 mana.
Oh yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about green, because green and red are the ones that tend to show the most pips, I think, especially on their creatures. Black tends to show a lot of pips on their spells and enchantments, but when it comes to, if you're looking at creatures, Crater Hoof is 3 green pips, Tyrannus Rex is 3 green pips, Apex Devastator's 2, Pathbreaker Ibex I believe is 2. It pops up a lot.
Yeah, you got a lot of great choices in monocolored decks for this land.
Yeah, fantastic choice. If you're running a monocolored deck, and like I said, it's not colorless, but it is an actual color, probably the closest thing to an auto-clue you're going to get. So fantastic selection, Dylan.
Yeah. And you know what? Before we end this off, with the question of the week, we talked about how we wanted people to choose commanders and all that. Let us know your color combination.
Yeah. Go ahead, guys. Let us know your color combination, and let us know why, too, because, I think we had a little emotional moment there where we kind of opened up a little bit. So don't just say, hey, white because my favorite commander is Odric. Tell us why. You think you're white because are you the hero of the family? Are you the one that always stands up for your siblings or the downtrodden? Are you green, because you're all about growth and symbiosis, you just let us know down below. We'd love to hear it. We definitely make an effort to respond to every comment. So if you leave it down below, maybe we'll drum up a quick conversation. But with that being said, guys, I think we are wrapping up with this episode. Just a quick reminder, this episode is coming out on Friday. The same Friday, in fact, which if you're listening to this, I will most likely be on the interstate on my way to Command Fest. So if you're in Command Fest Orlando this weekend, I will be there. So feel free to stop by, say hi. I'm willing to pick up a game or two. Obviously, I believe I said this last episode, but if you tell us that you are a dragon of the EDHRec, I will do my darndest to set aside some time to make sure we get a game, chat, whatever it is. But if you want to reach out to us for any reason, you can always find Dylan at Inuzuna, Inuzuna, on all your favorite platforms. I'm Cory, that's at Sleepcard, or you can reach out to the pod at ERCastPod or Contact.UrCast@gmail.com. So feel free to submit all your questions, all that good stuff. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere you can pretty much listen to this. We'll be there. And with that, guys, we are going to go ahead and get on out of here. Have yourselves a great Friday night magic, and peace out.
Catch you on the flip side.